The day Laura learned what nothing meant, it arrived in envelopes with windows. Derek had emptied their accounts and left a note by her chipped blue mug. "You'll land on your feet." It read like an audit, not a goodbye. "Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day." She returned the car, sold her ring for rent, stretched rice into 3 meals. Days on a convenience store register, nights cleaning a law office. On Saturdays she worked the church pantry, because handing someone else a bag of beans makes empty hands feel useful. Derek's name began appearing on donor lists and in glossy photos. He'd always been good at standing near power. Laura kept going. One gray afternoon, while she counted peaches and calmed a woman whose benefits vanished online, a coordinator named Margot said, "You've got a knack for chaos. Ever worked an event?" "What kind?" "A town hall. Presidential candidate. We're short on hands." Laura almost said no. Then she remembered the carpeted quiet of the law office. What time? The field office had once been a furniture showroom. It still exhaled ghosts of leather sofas. Hand-painted signs leaned against the walls. "Working families for Hale." The Keurig sulked. The candidate, Owen Hale, was due 2 blocks away, and nothing looked ready. A woman with cropped hair and a stopwatch expression hurried over. "Priya Patel, Deputy Campaign Manager." "You are?" "Laura. Margot sent me." "Bless her. We've got 6,000 flyers with the wrong time. If we don't fix it, we'll have empty chairs and a news crew. Can you triage? Do you have labels?" "A label maker." "Then we have a plan." Laura built an assembly line. Open, sticker, stack, pass. She resorted walk lists by distance, sketched routes, and sent runners to barbershops first. Within an hour the room found rhythm. Priya's glance shifted from skeptical to impressed. "Where'd you learn this?" "Holiday toy drives. Before. Stay for the event. We need a door captain." The recreation center smelled like chlorine and childhood. Folding chairs stretched in careful rows. When Hale arrived, no grand entrance, just grounded presence. Laura closed gaps to make the room feel full. He asked more than he talked. A woman in scrubs described 3 jobs stitched with adrenaline. A retired mechanic spoke about a pension that shrank like a wool sweater. When the mic reached Laura, she hadn't planned to speak. Yet her hand rose. "I'm Laura. A year ago I had a husband and plans. Now I have a stack of bills and 3 part-time jobs that almost add up to one. I don't need promises. I need rules that weren't written by people who already have somewhere soft to land." "What do you mean by rules?" Hale asked. She told him about the bank adding her to debt but walling her off from her own money after Derek drained it. About a safety net maze that punished progress. About a friend who lost childcare aid for accepting a 50-cent raise. Hale wrote while she spoke. He closed with, "We talk about growth, but sometimes growth is a single tulip in a field of dandelions." "Laura, thanks for clarifying the picture." The line lodged under her breastbone like a seed. Afterward Priya said, 7 a.m. Training canvas captains. I work at 9. Perfect. Training meant coffee in paper cups and a whiteboard that had seen better markers. The script tasted like cardboard until Laura crossed out what issues matter most to you. And wrote, "What's one thing you had to fix yourself this week because no one else would?" Heads lifted. Stories spilled. Porch stairs, bus routes, missing forms. "Turn answers into actions," Laura said. "Not pamphlets, fixes." "We don't have staff," Priya said. "You have volunteers. And me after 9. They called it porch problems. The office became a clearinghouse for small wins. A permit sped up, churches rotating free childcare during the debate, a contractor repairing stairs at cost. 2 weeks later, she ran into Derek. Balancing a tray of bagels at a hotel meet and greet. She watched him step from an elevator in a suit cut to flatter his ambitions. A lacquered, bored woman hovered at his elbow. "Laura," he said, as if the name were inconvenient. "You look good. I carry carbs now." He nodded at her badge. "The Hale Circus." Careful. They love a sad story. They also love donors who pay inflated invoices, she said before she could swallow it. His smile thinned. You never understood business. And you never understood bills in your own name. He shrugged. Good luck, Laura. She let the humiliation cool into resolve and went back to work. Campaigns are seasons. Late nights sprout early mornings. Priya learned she could hand Laura 3 problems and return to find 4 solutions. Hale began reading porch logs himself. When he echoed a line born in Laura's notebook, "We need rules that assume people are trying," she circled a typo and kept moving. The next test was a debate with Senator Caraway. The night before, the bus died on a county road. With no time for a backup, Priya triaged rideshares while Laura jogged to a peeling farmhouse to ask for a table and an outlet. Janice, in a flannel robe, let them in. Hale prepped at a floral vinyl table, sipping from a mug that announced World's Okayest Grandma, listening to via paperwork horror stories and taking notes on a paper placemat. On stage the next night, asked about the dignity of work, Hale held up the placemat. Janice from Hollowell keeps this list of who she called and when they told her to start over. If you want to see dignity, it's this paper. Our job is to make sure the paper doesn't have to exist. The room exhaled. The morning's headlines used the word steady. Small donations started coming in. Laura caught her face for 2 seconds on local news and laughed at herself in a diner window. The fog fought back. A blog with a wholesome name and venomous aim posted a grainy photo of Laura. Mystery woman behind Hale's soft policies was once sued for debt. Technically true, brutally incomplete. When Derek stripped the accounts, the credit card company chased both names. The settlement he negotiated with money she didn't have briefly made her the villain on paper. The post implied she wanted to erase personal responsibility. Priya forwarded the link. We can push back. Call. Laura stared at the ceiling. We already told my story, she typed back. We just didn't include the ugly parts. Then a text from an unknown number. Derek in a tux, arm around a donor, later investigated for no-bid contracts. We should talk. Before this gets worse for you. The old Laura would have panicked at worse. The current one carried a map of porches in her head. She sent the photo to Priya. My past wants a meeting with our future. Come to HQ, Priya replied. Hale wants to see you. Headquarters hummed. Hale stood over a laptop. This is a hit piece, he said. We can ignore it. We can fight it. Or if you want, we can use it. Tell the truth before someone sells a cheaper version. No script, Laura said. My words. Your words, Hale agreed. They filmed on a phone propped atop policy binders. I'm Laura, she said. When my life fell apart, responsibility meant paying what I owed even when someone else spent it. It meant showing up on porches and listening. Rules should help people stand, not punish them for trying. Outside, her phone buzzed. Meet me or I show them the statements with your name. Derek had always loved a stage he could control. Laura typed 4 words that tasted like steel. See you in daylight. She walked home under streetlights that turned puddles into futures. Morning would come either way. She intended to meet it standing. She set early alarm and laid out folding chair maps and name tag sheets for the Riverside rally. Laura packed notebook. She'd spent a year being reduced to paperwork. Tomorrow she would turn paper into a plan. Routes, seats, an aisle wide enough for a wheelchair and a story. She didn't know where this road ended, only that it no longer ended with Derek. It ended wherever people showed up and were counted. And tomorrow she would be there to count them. The Riverside Park rally felt less like politics and more like a county fair colliding with a choir rehearsal. The bandstand had been decorated with bunting that looked like it belonged to another century. Kids waved paper flags, and the smell of hot dogs drifted across the lawn. Laura arrived before dawn with a clipboard and a thermos of coffee strong enough to power a street lamp. She paced the rows of folding chairs, marking aisles with bright tape, ensuring the sound system faced both the cameras and the crowd. She had learned that politics was 90% logistics. If the line for bathrooms got too long, people left. If the stage was 3 inches too high, wheelchair access failed. Details weren't glamorous, But they were the difference between a story fading and a story spreading. As the sun rose, volunteers filtered in, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Priya swept across the field like a commander before battle, adjusting banners, whispering into walkie-talkies. "Laura," she said, pausing, "you've got the west entrance. VIPs, press, donors. Be ready for curveballs." Laura nodded. She had lived curveballs. By 10 o'clock, the park hummed. Families arrived in strollers, retirees in sun hats, students with homemade signs. The local paper sent a photographer, and a national cable crew lurked near the stage. Hale was scheduled to speak at 11. Laura scanned the crowd, and her stomach clenched. Near the west gate, Derek appeared, immaculate as ever. His arm draped over the lacquered woman from the hotel. His eyes found Laura, and he smirked, as if the rally were just another arena where he could pull her strings. She turned away, greeting attendees, checking passes, forcing her pulse to steady. Derek might have shown up to rattle her, but she refused to hand him that victory. When Hale finally stepped onto the stage, applause rippled like wind through wheat. He didn't thunder, he grounded. "I came here to talk about work, and I came here to listen." Laura drifted along the side aisles, scanning faces, ensuring chairs stayed upright. She caught snippets. A veteran telling a neighbor about broken benefits, a grandmother explaining how she babysat 5 children so their parents could keep jobs, a teenager muttering that his bus transfer cost more than his lunch. Then Hale called a name. "Laura, could you join me for a moment?" She froze, heat climbing her neck. Priya motioned with her chin, "Go." Laura walked up the steps, the crowd blurring into color and sound. Hale handed her the microphone. "This campaign isn't about slogans. It's about stories like Laura's. Will you tell them?" She wanted to vanish. Yet she lifted her chin. "Last year I was abandoned with nothing," she began, voice steadier than expected. "I worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on some months. I found myself at a food pantry. Not as a recipient, but handing out cans, because it felt better to give than to collapse. That's where this campaign found me. Not because I was anyone special, but because I was anyone at all." The crowd quieted. Even Derek's smirk flickered. "I don't need pity," Laura continued. "I need rules that make sense for people who are already trying. That's what Owen Hale asked me to help build. That's why I'm here." Applause rose. Not roaring but insistent, like waves that kept coming. Hale clasped her hand briefly before she stepped back. For the rest of the rally, Laura focused on the mundane. Rearranging chairs, answering questions about restrooms, guiding a child back to her mother. But inside something shifted. She was no longer invisible. She was part of the story. That night, the campaign released her short video. It spread faster than expected. Local papers ran headlines. From abandoned wife to campaign voice. National outlets picked it up. The comments, at least the ones Priya showed her, were kinder than Laura feared. Women wrote about similar abandonments. Men admitted debts they had hidden. Families confessed exhaustion. But Derek wasn't done. A week later, an envelope arrived at headquarters. Inside were copies of the old account statements. Her name beside Derek's purchases, his debts, his settlements. Attached was a handwritten note. "One word from me, and you're exposed." Laura handed it to Priya. "He's trying to blackmail me." Priya frowned. "Classic intimidation. We can bury it, but it will resurface if he pushes harder." "What if we don't bury it?" Laura asked. "You mean, air it ourselves?" "Yes, show the truth. All of it." Hale, standing in the doorway, said quietly, "It's your call, Laura. Not mine. Not his. Yours." Her chest tightened. For years, Derek had made choices that defined her life. This was her chance to reclaim definition. "Let's release it," she said. "With context. My words. Not his." The video went live 2 days later. Laura sat at a plain desk. No makeup crew, no teleprompter. "These statements show my name on debts I didn't create," she explained. "But responsibility means paying anyway, even when someone else ran off with the money. What matters is how we fix systems so people aren't punished for someone else's choices. That's why I'm here. The clip wasn't slick. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And real traveled farther than gloss. Supporters doubled. Volunteers quoted her lines on porches. Donations spiked. Even critics admitted she sounded authentic. But authenticity drew enemies. Caraway's campaign released an attack ad. Can you trust a candidate advised by someone who couldn't keep her own household afloat? The ad replayed grainy images of Laura, twisting her story into weakness. The backlash threatened to drown them, until something unexpected happened. Janice, the farmhouse woman with the VA paperwork, wrote a letter to the editor. If Laura is unfit, then so am I, and so are millions of us who tried to survive rules stacked against us. The letter went viral. Other citizens followed. Hashtags appeared. Hashtag We Are Laura. Suddenly, what had been a liability became a movement. The night before the next rally, Laura sat in her apartment, exhausted. She thought about the woman she had been. The one Derek abandoned, who counted coins for bus fare, who feared phone calls from collectors. That woman felt like a shadow now. But shadows remain attached. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Derek. You're in too deep. Walk away before you're destroyed. She stared at the words, then deleted them. For the first time, she didn't feel fear. She felt pity. Derek's power came from secrets. Hers came from refusing to hide. Election season accelerated. Laura found herself on buses, in diners, at folding tables scribbling maps, at podiums when Hale asked her to speak. She no longer saw herself as a volunteer. She was part of the machine, part of the vision. But Derek wasn't finished. Rumors began trickling into the press. Claims that she had leaked confidential documents, that she was trading influence for favors. None were true, but truth and rumor weigh the same when headlines hit. Priya confronted her in the office one night. If we can't shut this down, you'll become the story instead of the policies. Then let me tell it myself, Laura said. One more time. Priya hesitated. Are you sure? Laura nodded. Because if I don't, Derek wins. The following weekend, at a televised town hall, Hale introduced her again. Laura walked onto the stage under bright lights, the crowd expectant. She took a breath. You've heard things about me, she said. Some true, some twisted. Here's what's real. I was left with nothing. I worked until my hands blistered. I learned that rules matter more than pity. If that disqualifies me from politics, then we've disqualified half the country. Applause thundered. Cameras zoomed in. She spotted Derek at the back, his face pale. For once, he looked small. The campaign surged. Polls tightened. Every step forward felt like a victory carved from stone. Laura slept little, but the exhaustion felt different now. It was shared, it was chosen. She no longer dreamed of Derek. She dreamed of porches, of faces lighting up when someone listened. She dreamed of papers that didn't need to exist. And on the horizon, election day loomed, promising either triumph or collapse. Laura knew one thing. No matter the result, she would never again be the woman Derek abandoned with nothing. She had built a voice, and voices carried farther than bank statements or threats. Tomorrow would test them all. But tonight, Laura allowed herself one deep breath, one quiet smile. She was ready. Election day dawned with a brittle cold that seemed to sharpen every sound. In the campaign headquarters, phones rang without pause, printers spat out walksheets, and volunteers rushed in and out with clipboards like messengers in an ancient war. Coffee steamed in mismatched mugs. Laura arrived before sunrise. She taped precinct maps to the walls, checked bus routes for poll access, and fielded 100 questions that all began with "what if?" Priya caught her by the arm. "Eat," she ordered, pressing a granola bar into Laura's hand. "Today is a marathon, not a sprint." Laura laughed, unwrapping it. "I've been running marathons for 2 years." The first results trickled in by late afternoon. Counties Hale had fought hard for were reporting close margins. tighter than expected. Volunteers hunched over laptops, refreshing pages, murmuring prayers or curses. The air smelled of sweat and fear. Derek's shadow loomed even here. Reporters circled, whispering about an ex-husband with damaging documents, though none had surfaced. Laura knew he was out there, waiting for the chance to pull her back into silence. She refused to give him that chance. At 9 p.m., the headquarters held its collective breath. With 60% of precincts reporting, the numbers tipped. Hale ahead by 2 points statewide. The room erupted, shouts, hugs, tears. But Priya cautioned, "Don't celebrate yet. It's not over." Laura slipped outside, needing air. The night buzzed with generators and distant cheers. Across the street, under the glow of a lamppost, Derek leaned against a car. He hadn't aged a day since leaving, still slick, still polished. He smiled when he saw her, a predator savoring the moment. "You think this is victory?" he asked. "When the press digs deeper, you'll drag Hale down with you." Laura crossed the street slowly. "The press already dug," she said. "I gave them a shovel. They found the truth, not your version." His smile faltered. "Without me, you're nothing. You were always nothing." She stepped closer, voice low and steady. "I was nothing when I believed you. Now I know better." He scoffed, but she could see it, the panic behind his eyes. For the first time, Derek realized his power over her had dissolved. He was shouting at a wall that no longer listened. Laura turned and walked away, leaving him beneath the lamppost, smaller than she had ever seen him. Inside, the final numbers poured in. Cheers shook the walls as the map turned Hale's color. States called, projections made. Owen Hale had done it. He would be the next president. Priya hugged Laura so tightly she could barely breathe. "We did it," Priya whispered. "You did it." "No," Laura said, tears rising. "We all did." Minutes later, the campaign moved to the downtown convention hall, where cameras waited. The stage glowed with lights, bunting, and flags. Thousands packed inside, chanting Hale's name. When Hale walked on stage, he carried the same calm that had defined him since the first town hall. He spoke of dignity, of porch problems, of rules rewritten to help people stand. Then he paused, looked toward the wings, and said, "I want you to meet someone who taught me what this campaign means." Laura froze. Priya nudged her forward. She stepped into the lights, blinking at the sea of faces, the cameras broadcasting her image to millions. Hale clasped her hand. "This is Laura," he told the nation. "She reminded us that rebuilding starts with listening. Her story is our story." The crowd roared. Laura's knees trembled, but she stood tall. She scanned the audience, and for a fleeting moment, she saw Derek near the back, his face stricken. He had once abandoned her with nothing. Now he watched her stand beside the president-elect, her voice echoing across the country. Tears blurred her vision, but not from sorrow, from triumph. The following weeks were a blur. Transition meetings, policy discussions, endless calls. Laura wasn't just a volunteer anymore. She was offered a position on Hale's advisory team. Reporters hounded her. Some tried to paint her as a Cinderella tale, others as a liability. She answered with honesty, no polish, no fear. The hashtag We Are Laura refused to die. One evening, walking past the reflecting pool in Washington, Priya joined her. "Do you ever think about him?" Priya asked gently. "Derek." Laura shook her head. "Not anymore. He's a chapter 1 closed. What matters is what comes next." "And what comes next?" Laura looked at the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. "Work. Harder than ever. 'Cause if I could stand here, anyone can. And I want them all to know it." Months later, on Inauguration Day, Laura stood near the podium as Hale placed his hand on the Bible and took the oath. The air was crisp, the crowd endless, the moment heavy with history. She wasn't in the spotlight, but she didn't need to be. She knew the journey she had taken, from abandoned wife counting coins to trusted ally of a president. When she glanced toward the crowd, She thought she saw Derek's figure for an instant, watching from the edges, swallowed by insignificance. But maybe it was only her imagination. He no longer mattered. What mattered was the voice she had found, the people she represented, the map she had helped draw for the country. Laura exhaled, a smile breaking across her face. She was no longer afraid of being nothing. She had become something Derek could never destroy. A story stronger than shame, a voice louder than regret. And as the new president turned to wave at the nation, Laura stood beside him. Not as decoration, not as pity, but as proof. Proof that the woman abandoned with nothing had built everything that mattered. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.